Hello and welcome to It'll Be Alright in the 90s, the podcast that takes your 90s memories and turns them into bi-weekly slices of irresistible audio content. I'm Alex Greenwood, and joining me as usual is my co-host Stu Joslin. How are you, Stu?
Hi Greeny, yeah, lovely, thanks. We're in the middle of a spectacular run of guests at the moment. Tonight is no different. And potentially coming up in our next episode, we have our most high-profile guest yet, which we're really, really pleased about that they've decided to come on and talk to us. But more information about that coming up later. But yeah, really, really looking forward to tonight's program as well.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. We've got a real 90s, a real fan of the 90s, which we always like to have on the pod. But yeah, we'll come to that in a minute. Now, Stu, I'm not sure what system you've got in your Mark III Fiesta, but you might be interested in this actually, because our episode sponsor today is Goodman's Electronics. So you can go down to any participating branches of Halfords and quote the code AllRight90s to get 10% off their range of in-car entertainment systems. And that includes their range-topping GCE225 radio cassette unit. You can get 10% off that using that code. So thanks to Goodman's Electronics for sponsoring today's episode.
I am definitely looking to upgrade the factory tape player in the Mark III Fiesta. So it sounds like this is the right time to do it. Thanks very much to the guys at Goodman's for that. I actually did, in my dad's much mentioned on this podcast, Mark III Cavalier. I once asked for my birthday and received it was a real Heath Robinson type contraption, but it was a CD Walkman car converter kit, right?
Yeah.
So what it was is it was like a sort of shockproof plate, which had Velcro on it, and you put Velcro on the underside of the CD Walkman, that was attached to like a bendy arm, which was then screwed into the dashboard of the car. And then it came in one of those cassette to 3.5mm jack converters, which you would then put in the tape player to then be able to use your CD Walkman in the car and have it coming through the car speakers. Absolutely ridiculous.
It sounds amazing. Was it shock absorbent? Did it work?
Unfortunately, we never got to use it because it came with a range of power adapters for the I should have mentioned it came with a range of power adapters for plugging the CD Walkman into the cigarette lighter to keep it powered. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the kit did not come with an adapter that fits the socket on the CD Walkman. So I don't know why we didn't think to just use it on batteries, but as far as I remember, we never actually got to use it. So yeah, that's a great shame. But as I say, now I think back on it, that is a completely ridiculous piece of 90s electrical equipment.
Oh, it must have looked so funny. And now to think you can't even get cars with CD players in anymore. I don't think, can you? They're pretty much all just Bluetooth or.
That's it. Now, even my 15-year-old Corsa has now got a necklace head unit which just runs off of a USB stick. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I replaced that myself a few years back. So yeah, DAB in there as well. All installed. Course, I say installed myself. My mate Scott helped me, but I say I helped. I say he helped me. I helped him. But I think the world of adding to your in-car entertainment has definitely come on a long way from the Goodman's CD Walkman car conversion kit. I'll have to see if there's any evidence of this online. It's not a fever dream. It definitely happened. I remember my dad struggling with the drill. I can't believe he ever actually decided to put it in. I have to say.
So was it just drilled directly into the dashboard, or did it?
Yeah, like down by the gear stick, the sort of sensor console bit.
Yeah.
Down there on the passenger side, drill some pilot holes for the screws. Yeah, but it never worked and was quickly removed.
Probably wiped about 200 quid off the value of the Cavalier. But
next time he's on, we'll have to make a note. I'll have to ask him if he remembers that. But yeah, bizarre, totally bizarre. Time for What's the Most 90s, and as I spend most of my life thinking about food, I've decided to ask Alex this week who he thinks the most 90s celebrity chef is.
This was a really good question, I thought. A lot of answers came to my mind very quickly, and I won't go through them all. But my first thought was Ainsley Harriott, but then I did wonder if he's sort of big enough still to not be fully 90s, although I think he was at his height in the 90s. So I have instead gone for Anthony Warrell Thompson, who I think is 90s because, I mean, first off, there's a sort of slight 90s abrasive quality to him. He's a bit like a big posh lad. I think he went to public school and kind of there's some rugger bugger in him, I think. So he's got a bit of that 90s lad thing. But he was also on BBC's Food and Drink, which I think is one of the most 90s food programs that was on TV. And of course, he was also on Ready Steady Cook, which I think is the most 90s TV cookery program. And he's kind of disappeared, I think, since the 90s. You don't see a lot of him. I know he's on I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here in the early noughties, but aside from that, he's not really around that much. So he's maybe a bit stuck in the 90s, and that's why I've gone for him. What about you?
Well, first of all, two things that spring to mind for me about Wazza, which is, first of all, I remember an episode of Ready Steady Cook, or being told about an episode of Ready Steady Cook, because my mum was quite a fan, where it must have been a celebrity episode, and somebody, for a joke, I think, brought in like frozen fish fingers, frozen chips, didn't actually bring anything like fresh in.
Yeah.
And he was a chef and he was really angry. And I think he got nicked for shoplifting. Did he not?
Yes, he did. Yeah. It was on his Wikipedia. I was looking it up earlier.
I'm glad it is in the public domain and thus cannot be deemed to be libelous.
Yeah. Jeff did just like wake up with a start when you said that. But,
yeah, move on. I'm just hearing in my headphones. Move on. So my favourite celebrity chef of the 90s is a chap called Martin Yan. Have you ever heard of Martin Yan?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so in the mid to late 90s, I would say, after CITV, I was a big CITV kid, of course, but after CITV, in the early evenings, say sort of 5 o'clock, 5:30, before the advent of the Tea Time quiz show, there used to come sometimes a TV show called Yan Can Cook, which was syndicated from the US, where I believe it was made. I've had a look, and it's 1982 to the present day. So this cookery show has been being made for 40 years consecutively so far.
That's wild.
And I remember enjoying it. I remember my parents enjoying it, and I remember his catchphrase at the end of the show was always, "If Yan can cook, so can you." And he would do like sort of funny things. I remember he would do like percussive things, like with meat cleavers. Like he'd do like a sort of spoons trick with a meat cleaver on the counter and stuff like that. And it was just a very fun show. And when I started thinking about 90s TV chefs, I thought Martin Yan deserved a little bit of love, because maybe he's not the most well-known or famous in the UK, but he definitely was on HTV after CITV in the mid-90s. So Martin Yan for me.
Good choice, yeah. I will say Gary Rota just popped into my head. Not for the first time on this podcast, but he was very 90s as well, wasn't he? But there you go, yeah. He missed a cut, sadly, because I didn't think about him in time. But we got Wazza and Yan in the ledger, the most 90s celebrity chefs.
Yeah, honourable mention to Gary Rhodes, just for the hair, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
An iconic 90s hairstyle, I think we could even go as far to say for Gary Rhodes.
Yeah, I always get him mixed up with Nigel Kennedy.
Yes. No, absolutely. Very similar.
Went to the same barber, didn't they? For sure.
Nigel Kennedy, big Villa fan at the Villa.
Yeah. Not
sure who Gary Rhodes followed, but if he did follow Villa, I think I would have known about it. So, yeah.
Our guest tonight is the man who gives us a daily insight into life as a 90s teenager through his popular Crowby's Diaries series on Twitter. Not only that, but he also just so happens to be the lead singer for Lincolnshire's finest classic rock covers band, Molly's Chamber. Here to take us through his highlights of the decade, it's a pleasure to welcome onto the show Simon Crowson. Simon, how are you?
I'm good after that introduction. Yeah, thank you. I've never been bigged up like that before. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh,
no problem.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Pleasure,
really looking forward to chatting to you about the decade for sure.
Yeah. So Simon, we've asked you on predominantly because of your Twitter profile, Crowby's Diaries, where you read out or type out excerpts of your 90s diary every day. Yeah. How did that project come about? What inspired it?
Well, I mean, obviously keeping the diary in the first place 30 years ago. My first diary that I kept was when I was I was 9. and that was 1983, by the way, because I'm 48, getting old. Yeah, my nan and granddad bought me this little dinky World of Sport diary. Do either of you remember World of Sport?
Dickie Davis.
Yeah, Dickie Davis. Yeah. So that was like a tiny little pocket diary. So the entries were very short, and I was 9, so it's things like did maths or Mr. Pets got angry, that sort of thing, and that was the day's entry, it got to 2013, and I thought, I don't know what, but I thought it'd be just fun to tweet those entries out. It was easy. I think I scheduled it all in one night because they were such short entries, Mm-hmm. That's just nonsense, because it was a 9-year-old. And then I didn't keep a 1984 diary. I did a 1985 diary when I was 11, and that was a bit patchy. But when they did Top of the Pops 1985 on BBC 4, I was tweeting out screenshots from it, and it went down very well. And the BBC 4 Twitter account retweeted something from it, and it kind of went a little bit viral. And I thought to myself, well, I started a 1988 diary in about June. I thought that would be coming up to 30 years. So then I started tweeting that when that came around. And then from there on in, I'd kept diaries right up until, spoiler alert, the end of 1992. So you're actually coming to the end of my diary soon. So yeah, that's how it started. Basically, I just kept tweeting.
Yeah, great stuff. It is. We definitely recommend any listeners go and have a look. We'll give the handle at the end, but yeah, it's well worth a read. It's nostalgia.
Absolutely, and let us enjoy them while we may, if they're coming to an end. That's a great shame.
Yeah.
Yes, I did start a 1993 diary. You see, when I sign off at the end of 1992, it says I've just bought a 1993 diary. It's a day a page, so I probably won't have very much to say. And as it turned out, I didn't. I wrote in it for 2 days and then discarded it. So that was the end of that.
Well, we'll try and catch up on some of the lost time then tonight during the course of the pod. We'll see what we can do for all the Crowby's Diaries fans out there. Lovely.
Yeah, exactly. So the questions we've got for Simon are the same or similar to ones that we use with all our guests. So the first one is, Simon, what was your life like in 1990?
1990 was the year I finished secondary school. So it's very much a game of two halves. First half of the year is, GCSEs, and flunking the GCSEs, by the way, most of them. I got 3 GCSE above C grades. Non-revision subjects, so English Lit and drama. I passed those, got A and 2 Bs, and everything else was almost alphabeticised. I think I got an F in French, a G in geography. If I was doing history, I got an H. But I didn't do history. But yeah, so that was my GCSEs, and then I carried that lack of work ethic into my first job. So I didn't really want to go into higher education, I just didn't want to do anything. I was just lazy teenager, but my mum was trying to, push me into doing something. So I went on YTS, or YT as they'd rebranded it that year, Youth Training Scheme. A local company called Chater Training was doing it, and it's like 32 quid a week. You go, you probably know the score with these things. You have a work placement, you have a day a week to go and study. I did a business administration course, went for several interviews, and ended up getting a job in a Ford dealership. And I was there for 2 years, so I left in middle of 92. Yeah, and I started going to the pub, of course, as you do when you're 16. Getting drunk a lot.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Ford dealership. I'm glad that hasn't sort of got lost in the gap between our 1990 and 95 questions. Yeah. I did want to ask about the front page newspaper splash of yourself in a superhero costume with a new, was it a J plate?
It was
the launch day, Ford Orion or something like that.
Well, it was the J Reg launch day. So it was August the 1st. The new registrations used to come out, and somebody had the brilliant idea. I think it was John Wilson. He was a sales executive. He wasn't there for very long, but he was one of these, he was like the office comedian sort of character. Everybody's got one of those, and he was one of those people. And he said, let's dress up as Batman and Robin. And he asked me if I'd dress up as Robin. And I was up for the humiliation, and so we did it. And it got on the front page of the Peterborough Evening Telegraph that night. There's not much more to it than that. But I think it was supposed to be going in the Spalding Guardian as well, but they never put the picture in. I can't imagine why. But yeah, that was fun. Yeah.
Okay, let's not dwell on broken hearts by the press for longer than we need to.
Yeah.
So we're moving into areas that aren't covered by the diaries now. So this is going to be it'll be around the 90s exclusive.
Yeah.
So what was happening in your life in 1995?
Yes. So 95 when I didn't have a diary. So I have to rely on my memory for that, which is pretty good, luckily. So by 1995, I'd gone to work for a catalogue company. I started there in 93, and they were called Ideal Home Mail Order. They later evolved into what is now known as Ideal World TV, the shopping channel. That's another story. So I was there, and I won't get into the boring details of the job I did there, but it was a catalogue company. I made a lot of good friends there, and about halfway through 1995, no, not even that late actually, it was quite early on, I moved out of home for the first time. I moved into a house share, and it was just a great time in 1995. There was a young couple living in one room, a middle-aged guy living in another room, and within a month they'd all moved out. I don't know why. It might have been my loud music, I can't possibly say. But they'd all moved. Actually, the couple, they broke up, and so they went their separate ways and moved out. And the guy, he'd been living there for ages. And then around that time, just one of these serendipitous coincidences, one of my workmates who I was just starting to get on well with, he'd just been kicked out by his dad. He moved in. It was basically like men behaving badly. It was we were in this house share situation for about 5 or 6 months. Yeah, I've got great memories of 1995 because of that house. It had its ups and downs. I had not appendicitis, but suspected appendicitis, and had to go into hospital to have my appendix out. And I remember watching Eurovision in hospital with those black and white TVs that you have over your bed,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that was a bit scary because I was a heavy smoker at the time. I don't smoke now, but yeah. And also, not to bring the mood down too much, but my mum had just she'd had a brain tumour removed just before that happened, and she was in the health centre, the local GP, having a follow-up appointment when I went there, sort of doubled up in pain. I came out, and so this is obviously, I wasn't living at home anymore, and I came out from the doctor's surgery. My mum was in the waiting room. I was like, "What are you doing here?" She said, "I'll come for a follow-up checkup." I said, "Can you take me to hospital?" I think I've got appendicitis. So yeah.
95, an interesting year. Yeah.
Lots of ups and downs. Yeah.
The other people in the house share, they didn't walk out because you kept wandering around the house wondering why the Spalding Guardian hadn't printed that picture in. I can't take it anymore.
I might have mentioned it once or twice. What of it?
Right. Okay. So 95 was up and down. What about the end of the decade then? 1999.
By 1999, I joined my first band. I joined my first band in 1998, the year before. I auditioned for them. They used to be called Stand. And then when I joined them, they were looking to rebrand, really, because they got a bit of a reputation for, not being able to sing, really, because the bassist and the guitarist were doing all the singing, and they wanted to rename themselves. So I joined that band the year before, beat a few other people in the audition. All I've been doing before that was like, karaoke here and there and stuff like that, sort of finding my voice. And So I went for the audition, and I got the job and did several gigs with them. And then 99, we did, for the second year running, we did Music on the Meadows in Stamford, which has gone on to be known as the Riverside Festival. And that was a really good memory for 1999 because they had a little battle of the bands competition that day, and we won it basically jointly with another band. So that was a really good day. It was good until the end of the day because we were the first band on, and I remember going up on the stage, and after the first or second song, do you remember Everyone's Free to Wear Sunscreen by Baz Luhrmann?
Yeah, we certainly do. We spoke about it at length on the last episode. We did One Hit Wonders last time out. So,
yeah, so that was in the charts at the time. It was July, and it was like a really hot, sunny July day. And I remember being up on the stage and just having a bit of banter with the audience. And I said, ladies and gentlemen of the class of 99, wear sunscreen. So I was like saying, be careful. It's hot. It's sunny. Be careful today, sort of thing. I got lots of sunblock on, but what happened was because I was having such a good time on stage, I sweated it all off. And never topped it up and didn't wear a baseball cap or any protection. And by the end of the day, I wouldn't say I quite had sunstroke, but it was approaching that. I got blisters on my ears.
Man,
my head was burnt to a crisp. And I remember being in the taxi on the way home and just being like, I want to die. So it was a good day, but it ended badly. I discovered an incredible invention after that called the baseball cap, and so that's never happened since.
Everything was okay from there on. Lovely. Yeah. I have to ask, as a Stamford musician or a musician in and around Stamford, there's a band that we've spoken about fleetingly on this podcast that are from Stamford itself, I believe, called Midget.
Oh God, yeah, I played on the same bill as Midget. Yeah, they were headliners that year. I remember them they used to do a cover of a song called, you would know probably Rubber Bullets by 10cc.
Yeah.
That was their big piece. I think they'd just come back from doing the Fuji Festival or something. Like they were big, they're big in Japan. Do you know him? I mean, do you know him personally? Do you?
No, I don't. But
I'm not going to say anything bad about him.
No. It's just that it's been mentioned on the pod before. I had they were on like a free CD that came with an issue of Kerrang that my dad had bought.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with this song called "Silly Little Rich Cow," which was off of one of their albums.
I don't know that one. No.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's an album track, I think. But yeah, we've spoken about it a couple of times, and it's been in the back of my mind that I should try and track down. I think his name's Richard, the main man from Midget. See if I can find him.
By the way, we were called Two Flower. That was what we ended up being called. Do you know what Two Flower is? That's a Terry Pratchett character.
I'm not familiar, I'm afraid.
No, me neither. I mean, I'm not a Terry Pratchett fan, but the drummer was a Terry Pratchett fan. But Midget, I was impressed by Midget. They were very good.
Superb. Yeah. Well, that's I'm going to have to redouble my efforts now to see if I can find out where they are and see if we can maybe secure some of their time. That would be really good. Cool. Okay. So we've covered where and when you were in the decade. So we'll go to cultural highlights now, and these are subjects that we like to talk about on the pod. So first up is cars. So do you have a car that sticks out, either that you owned or your family owned? Your favorite car of the 90s?
Maybe I'll quote you a couple of cars. So the first car I drove after I passed my driving test was a Hyundai Pony, which was
the Pony,
so that was fun. It's quite a very lightweight car, and quite easy to drive. Nice first car when you've just passed your driving test. Took me 5 attempts, by the way, to pass my driving test, several years. But
they can't all have been your fault, surely. Those 4 failed tests, they can't all have been your fault.
Oh, don't get me started on that.
No. Bonus episode.
So Hyundai Pony, and then the aforementioned friend that I was house sharing with after we weren't sharing a house anymore. He was living down the road with his then girlfriend, and I'd lent him a couple of £100, I think, to buy a Saab, because he was a bit of a Saab fanatic, and that car turned into a money pit basically, and he wasn't able to pay me back. It just had lots of problems, and so as a part payment, he said, I want you to have my Renault 21. So I got his Renault 21 basically. I think I had to pay him a bit as well, a couple of £100 or something. He said, "Oh, it's worth much more, but yeah, I'll let you have it." But it had a lot of problems. I don't know if you know the Renault 21s.
I can picture one.
They're big cars.
Yeah.
So it's about 1998, I think I got it. The passenger door wouldn't close properly, so I remember picking up my mate Vinny from his house one day, and we were halfway up the road, and the door flew open, which he wasn't too pleased about. And the demisters didn't work, but it was fast. It was a good fast car, you know, a lot of power. And then I had a series of Metros after that. I went from like a really big car to like sport cars. I went to the used car dealer looking to buy a Mini, and ended up coming away with a Metro because they didn't have any Minis. And then, so I'd lost a G-Reg Austin Metro, and then after that I had an L-Reg Rover Metro, which was a 1.4 SI, which is a nice nippy little.
Oh, lovely.
Now, if you talk about favourite cars, that was probably the favourite one I had but it was just outside the 90s. I actually had it, but it was a 90s car, so I guess it qualifies.
Yeah, no, I will allow it. Yeah, we'll allow it.
Yeah,
absolutely superb. Yeah, I had a well, it was called a Rover 100 then, but my second car was a Rover 100 on an R plate, which was essentially the same car.
Yeah, they've rebadged it, you fool.
Half of the population thinks of that quote when they see one of them around, don't they?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Shall we move on then to, you obviously have some music in your history and to present day. So this might be difficult for you, but what was your favourite album or act of the 90s?
You're absolutely right. It is an impossible question to answer. I mean, I knew I was going to get this question, of course, so I made a sort of little short list of albums. You can't make me pick one out of them because I would hate to. But I mean, I think especially when it comes to 90s albums, I tend to sort of fondly remember and get nostalgia the most from albums, unfortunately associated with, you know, emotional times in your life. You know, I think it's the same for a lot of people, you know, breakups, bereavement, stuff like that. Won't get into those, but that's what most of these albums sort of, you know, I can listen to them now and not sort of have that stuff raked up and just enjoy the music, you know. But that's why I got into them at the time, you know, because they struck an emotional chord. So Pulp, His and Hers from 1994 was a really just. There's not one bad song on that album. I love that. People always talk about Different Class because it's got Common People and Sorted Freeze and Wiz and Disco 2000 and all that stuff. And it is a great album, but for me, His and Hers is the better album. You've got Babies, Do You Remember the First Time? Acrylic Afternoons, Lip Gloss, Happy Endings. So many good songs on it out. It's just a beautiful album. Great production. Also, REM. I'm a bit of an REM fan. Never went to see him live, and obviously I've missed the boat there now. But New Adventures in Hi-Fi is probably my favourite REM album for the aforementioned reasons. Super Unknown, Soundgarden. God Shuffled His Feet, Crash Test Dummies.
Another one we spoke about on the last episode when we did the one-hit wonders. Well, technically, they're not one-hit wonders, as we discovered.
Don't say that.
No, exactly. But you'd be hard pressed to do a 3 in 10 on them. Let's put it that way. But
right.
Yeah, you would be. But no, yeah,
I'd end up naming a load of album tracks and then not win anything. That's what would happen with me. Yeah, because I do like Crash Test Dummies. I used to really annoy the people I used to share an office with at Ideal with my Crash Test Dummies impressions. I used to sit there just singing their catalogue. Radiohead, OK Computer.
Yeah, that's possibly the album of the 90s, I think. Well, certainly for me, anyway.
And as a big Human League fan, I got to say the 2 Human League albums from the 90s, Octopus and Romantic. Great albums. Yeah,
brilliant. Yeah, no, absolutely nice. Superb choice. We keep getting asked by our guests to somehow narrow this question down and make it a bit easier. Yeah. We haven't taken any action on that yet, but I think at the next at the next admin meeting, we need to craft this question in a bit of a better way, I think, Alex.
Yeah, it is a bit unfair, isn't it?
But then if we don't ask it like this, we won't get 7 or 8 classic albums that our guests can talk about and rhapsodize about, so maybe we should keep it this way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we move on then to the silver screen and your favorite movie of the 90s.
Again, difficult to narrow it down, but I have narrowed it down to one. You'll be glad to know. And I've said, I'm going to say, Pulp Fiction.
Brilliant.
Good choice, yeah.
Yeah, I love that film. If any time that's on TV, I'll watch it. A few years ago, I didn't see it in the cinema when it was first on. I saw it on a bootleg video when it hadn't been out for very long. Again,
we won't tell anyone. Don't worry. Sorry.
That was back in '95 when I was living at that place. But a few years ago they did a near to where I live. They did a drive-through movie version of it in the garden centre car park. I think. I can't remember. I think that's where it was. But yeah, so it's like a big screen drive-through experience, and they had Pulp Fiction. So yes, I enjoyed watching it that way, and I've got it on DVD and got the script book, and yeah, it's just a great film, isn't it? What more can you say? I do like a lot of Tarantino stuff, but not seen it all. I'm not an aficionado, but I mean, I can mention other 90s films that I like.
I watched Pulp Fiction for the first time 2 weeks ago.
You're kidding me.
I had never seen it before. No. So this is all fallen quite well. And I have to agree with you. It's it's definitely one of the best of the decade for sure.
Great storytelling, isn't it? And the way and the conversational stuff that's in it. A lot that's been copied by a lot of people since. Where you've got John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson chatting, just shooting the breeze in the car and stuff like that. That hadn't really been done very much before, that style, but juxtaposed with all the other stuff that was happening in it as well, the violence, and just such a good film. Yeah.
Well, the main thing for me was now a lot of the Simpsons that I didn't get before now makes total sense. So.
Oh yeah, there's like a whole episode of The Simpsons devoted to Pulp Fiction, isn't there? Yeah.
I think the cops are sat in the Krusty Burger, aren't they? And they're doing the Royale with cheese thing.
Yeah.
And when it came, I was like, oh, this is what this is.
It's the little differences. Example. Well, at McDonald's, you can buy a Krusty Burger with cheese, right? But they don't call it a Krusty Burger with cheese. Get out. Well, why do they call it? A Quarter Pounder with cheese. Quarter Pounder with cheese? Well, I can picture the cheese, but, do they have crusty, partially gelatinated, non-dairy gum-based beverages? Mm-hmm. They call them shakes.
Shakes. I don't know what you're getting.
Yeah.
So, I'm well known on this pod for not having, for a host of a 90s podcast, not actually having that much experience of classic 90s things. So I'm doing my best to catch up.
But you are quite young, aren't you? I mean, you're not as old as I am, for example.
Well, I'm 33.
Yeah,
yes.
That's quite young in my book. Yeah.
And Alex is slightly older than me, so we grew up during the 90s. So so I don't suppose I would have been allowed to see Pulp Fiction when it came out recently, because I would have been like 6 or 7. So yeah. So it's my duty now to catch up. That's how I see it.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to video games then. Do you have a favourite computer game from the era?
From the era? I mean, my first games console in the 90s was a Sega Master System, and I had that for a brief period and bought a few games for that. I bought Afterburner, Golden Axe. You had was it Alex Kidd in Miracle World already built into it? I think it was. All my mates had got, well, not all my mates, sorry, that's not true, but a mate had got a Mega Drive, 2 other mates had got Amigas. I still had a ZX Spectrum, and that was kind of on its last legs, and obviously people were moving on from 8-bit and getting these it was more about consoles, wasn't it, or more sophisticated computers, and I couldn't wait to save up for a Mega Drive. Like, the Mega Drive was out, but I just didn't have the patience. It would have took me like 2 weeks to save up for a Mega Drive, but I wanted it now. So I bought a Master System, and then I had, like, I would say, buyer's remorse as soon as I got it home. It was good, but it wasn't good enough. So I think and it's documented well in the diary. I think what selfish little brat I was, you know. I got bored with it very quickly, and I wanted the Mega Drive, and I think my mum lent me some money to buy a Mega Drive, and I got a Mega Drive. And also there was down my local pub, going back to the pub again, but there was a thing called a Megatech machine. Do you remember those?
Oh no, this is new on me.
Right, so they were like an arcade machine with a Mega Drive inside, or as American listeners would know it, a Sega Genesis. But it was basically a showcase for a Sega Mega Drive, and my local pub had got this in the hall, in the corridor, and it had got Golden Axe, Revenge of Shinobi.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Shinobi, I don't know. And Tetris, and obviously you had to put money in it to play. And so it was a very good shop window for the Sega Mega Drive. You would go and use it as an arcade machine, knowing full well that you were playing Sega Mega Drive games, and you would think, do you know what? I need to get myself a Sega Mega Drive so I don't keep putting all these pound coins in. So, and that's what a lot of people did. But yeah, I used to play on the Megatech machine in the White Horse, my local pub, and then soon after that bought a Mega Drive. Got Mortal Kombat 2, Tekken. I used to like fighting games. So yeah, a lot of that sort of thing.
Now you say this, I remember playing Italia 90, the top-down football game, and I think Outrun as well on a machine in the reception of the sports centre, the Springfield.
Oh yeah.
So that's presumably this is a Megatech machine. So yeah, must be. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you pay, and you get like time. You get like 5 minutes, and then you could choose which game to play.
Exactly that.
That's it, right? Okay, that is it. Okay, so we do know what it is, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
If it was called a Megatech where I was, it might have been skinned differently or something where you were and had a different name, but it was called a Megatech.
Well, they never should have got rid of it. Well, I mean, the whole sports centre's gone now, but that's a different story. Okay, so we'll go small screen then, and I'll ask you about your favourite TV series from the 90s.
This is another. You can't make me pick a favourite. So I've alluded to Alan Partridge. Alan Partridge. I noticed one of your recent previous guests said Alan Partridge. But yeah, I'm a big Alan Partridge fan. I got into Alan Partridge when he did Knowing Me, Knowing You, which is just brilliant. I just loved it. And then when I'm Alan Partridge came out, I was about 97.
Yeah.
Can't talk about the second series because that's not the 90s. But yeah, obviously when he's living in a travel tavern, it's brilliant. Bottom as well, Richie and Eddie.
Yeah,
love that. And if you read the diaries from the early 90s, then you would say, well, why has he not mentioned these? Because it's all he bangs on about. So I'll say it now: Home and Away and Prisoner Cell Block H. Now, I know Prisoner Cell Block H wasn't a 90s TV program, but it was on in the early 90s. We were 10 years behind Australia, and I was a big Prisoner fan. And I've unfortunately retained a lot of knowledge from Prisoner Cell Block H. If I was going to go on Mastermind, it would either be Sopranos, which that started in 99 actually, so I can get away with mentioning that, or Prisoner, I think, or music, you know. But I could talk about those for ages. I know ridiculously stupid geeky things about Prisoner that you shouldn't know. Nobody should know. You know?
I've never seen it. I've never even seen a clip about it. I think I just know the name.
They're all on YouTube.
Okay.
All 692 episodes are on YouTube.
Wow.
We'll watch it from the beginning. See, there's a geeky fact for you.
Yeah.
It got remade as a thing called Wentworth. Or it got called Wentworth Prison over here because I don't know why they renamed it, but it was on Channel 5, and that was quite good.
Yeah.
I always remember seeing it in the listings for ITV either like early in the morning or very late at night.
Yeah.
During the sort of when I was forensically scanning the What's on TV magazine for when The Simpsons was on and things like that. I always remember seeing Prisoner there. So well, there we go. The Odyssey to start on YouTube.
Okay, we've got a bit more freedom now. What about a wild card, Simon? Anything you want from the 90s?
God, I thought about this. I mean, I suppose maybe Napster. and getting my first
Nice.
computer, because that was 1999, and first time I was able to actually download music, burn my own CDs and stuff like that. And yeah, that was just brilliant. The world that opened up once I, and just that, actually, I guess the whole sort of world opened up by getting a computer and getting on the internet, that I had at the tail end of 1999.
Brilliant, yeah. I remember my family got our first computer around the same time. Time computers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, absolutely brilliant. So I'm definitely with you on that. Okay, so we're on the home straight now. A couple of questions to finish off. First of all, how do you think the 1990s shaped you?
It's a really hard one to answer. There was good and bad experiences in the 90s, and I did most of my growing up in the 90s. I was 15 at the start and 25 at the end. So actually, I still haven't grown up, to be honest.
Yeah, 15 to 25 is a really significant time, isn't it? It's like you say, it's growing up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and the last question we always ask our guests is, what one thing from the 90s would you like to bring back?
What about taping stuff off the radio?
Brilliant.
Yes.
I miss all the stuff that we don't do anymore because technology has advanced. There was a craft to it, wasn't there? When you were still doing stuff like that, and things take so little effort now. If you want music, you literally just tap your phone to get a song. Whereas before, you'd have to, have a tape in the tape recorder, listening out for it on the radio, hit record, make sure you don't get the DJ. I do miss that. I miss the effort of having to do things. That the technology has replaced. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
what a great choice.
Yeah, I think it made you value, especially music, a lot more, didn't it? I think, and you have to work a bit for it.
Yeah.
Because even with Napster, if you're going to download something, you were downloading it for free, maybe, but it would take hours, if not a day, to download a song, depending on how good your dial-up internet was.
Yeah.
But, I think you did value it. Like, of course, it's a bit of a cliche to say it now, but if you bought an album, you'd saved up for it. You were just going to listen to that album. Make the most of it,
Absolutely. I used to buy at the height of my CD buying in the 90s, and just after I passed my driving test, I'd usually buy 2 CDs a week, copy them onto either side of a C90, and then that'd just be on a loop all week in my car. And whoever I was car sharing with, because I used to take a lot of people into work with me, would be subjected to whatever music I was listening to, and they would know the album as well as I did by the end of the week. And then I'd buy another 2 albums the next week. But yeah, I miss that. I do miss that sort of thing. You can still buy CDs, but I haven't bought a CD for a long time.
Yeah. Now this has been alluded to recently on Top of the Pops 93. On this weekend's offering, Take That appeared with an exclusive first UK performance of Prey, which became their first number one, and it hadn't been released yet.
Right.
And then I think it's Tony Dort at the end says that's going to be number one next week. Just to let you know now, that's going to be number one next week. Right, or it might be Sexy MF, Mark Franklin. Well, Simon, thank you so much for coming on tonight and talking to us. We really do appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
Okay.
Before we go, I'd just like to ask you a bit more about Molly's Chamber, who we mentioned at the start. So this is your current band.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about the kind of things you get up to.
Gigging mostly and rehearsing. We've got a rehearsal tomorrow night. We've got another gig coming up on Wednesday. I don't know when this podcast goes out, so I don't want to.
It'll be in a few weeks' time.
A few weeks' time. Okay, so I'll say then the next gig I think is on the 8th of October. The Red Line at Stickney. We've got the Coach and Horses at Boston on the 29th of October. Carpenter's Arms on the 4th of November. Keep them fairly busy.
Excellent.
But yeah, about as busy as we want to be. We've all got day jobs, So, it's great. I've been in 3 bands. The second band I was in was with the guitarist from the first band, and that was all right. But it's definitely the best band I've been in. Great bunch of lads, and we have a good time. Enjoy it, you know.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, that's what it's all about. As as somebody in a similar band, that's definitely what it's all about. If you can retain the enjoyment, then that's absolutely perfect. Yeah. And the very, very last thing, where can our listeners find the Diaries and find you on Twitter?
Well, on Twitter, it's at Crowby's Diaries. It's CROWBYS Diaries.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the episode description. So
thanks. Yeah,
that's brilliant. Oh, thank you so much for coming in to talk to us. Really appreciate it. And maybe we'll think of something that you can come back and talk to us about soon. That'd be cool.
Oh, thanks very much. Yeah, well, I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Simon there for that. That was brilliant. It's always nice to have someone who has some sort of connection to the past or is invested in the past, as we are, because it creates a certain sort of richness to the conversation. And Simon was certainly great when it comes to reminiscing about the decade. So thanks very much to him. And as we said, please do check out his Twitter account because it is brilliant and it's a real avenue of nostalgia and just a nice thing to read every day. So check it out.
That's excellent. What a great guy. We've got some good bonus stories that aren't covered by the Diaries, which sadly sound as if they're going to end soon on Twitter. So make sure you give him a follow before the end of the year and get the last few months in and then go right back to the start. Why not? It's really, really good content.
Yeah. If you want to get in touch with us about anything you've heard today or anything else you've heard on the pod, you can find us in the usual places. So that's on Twitter at allright90s. Email allright90s@gmail.com, facebook.com/allright90s. They're all letters, no numbers. And then on Instagram, we are allright.90s.podcast. And we would love to hear from you.
We certainly would. So next time, in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be talking to...
Don't say it. Don't say it. I don't think you can say it.
You're right. No, you stop me. I don't think I can. No, but we will hopefully be talking to somebody very special. I'll put it that way. But if not, and we have to postpone slightly, then we will, of course, be back as usual with another aspect of 90s culture to dip into. But keep those fingers crossed because if we can do it, it will be a fantastic episode. I can guarantee you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? Even if it doesn't happen, if in the next episode, it will happen at some point in the future. So
it certainly will.
Keep subscribing, and you'll see when it does happen. So
trust us. Yeah. Just trust us. That's all we're asking.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's it from us now, and we'll you'll hear from us. I've messed it up. So yeah, that's it for us, I think, for this week. So keep tuned in for whatever's coming up next, however exciting it is. Oh, for Christ's sake, I can't do goodbye, Stu. You do it. You do it. There's something about it I just can't do.
We're gonna keep this in. We're gonna keep all this in. This is brilliant. I'll just say it's goodbye from me. I'm off to look up Richard from Midget in the Lincolnshire phone book.
And it's goodbye from me. I'm off to I don't know. What am I off to do?
Off to practice your goodbyes.
Yeah, I'm off to practice my goodbyes. Exactly. Well said. Cheerio.
Bye.